so far away, stolen one day, shackled and chained. My family's so far away, they live to fight for freedom days. Crossed oceans and bays, crossed rivers and lakes, crossed oceans and bays, crossed rivers and lakes, crossed rivers and lakes. Cousin, cousin, sister, sisterin, brother, brethren, I see you, and I know you too. Cross oceans and bays, cross rivers and lakes, cross rivers and lakes. On the move, 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 on the move. Live maroon, live maroon, live maroon, live maroon, live maroon, live maroon. On the move, on the move, on the move. Iron prize, iron prize, iron prize. We will expose their lies. On the rise, on the rise, on the rise. Oh, long live, long live, long live. Mama Africa, long live, long live, long live Mama Earth, long, long.
Hey, Mom, you're on the move. Full House and Suzanne, where you hook this up at? Hold on 1 minute. Janet and Janine standing on. Could you... Oh, Janet's a little short. Momia?
Your greatest challenges during your time in prison?
The greatest challenges for us was being separated from our family and being wrongly accused, being innocent and being imprisoned for something that we didn't do and something that this government knows we didn't do. They know that they shot and killed Officer Ram and sent us to prison 30 to 100 years for nothing because they wanted the quiet move. They wanted to stop the MOVE organization. They wanted to stop the power and the teaching of John Africa, which they have not done, will not do, and MOVE is continuing to put out information, continuing to be strong, continuing to fight John Africa's revolution.
I hope you received from the entire movement the applause, the affection, the love that all of you so richly deserve.
Mumia, since we came out of here, we have got...
Has moved you, what have you seen since you got out that you can't believe? And I know it's kind of crazy, I mean, but tell me about, when you look at society, what blows your mind?
All of this technology. that is, we still...
All that technology,
yes, all of this technology, but really what is really impressing us, Mumia, is to actually see the faces of the power that's been being fueled to help us get released. You know, we've heard names, we've gotten letters, but we're actually seeing this force and feeling all of the love and the appreciation they have for the work we've had to do for 41 years.
Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Mahanoy.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
And that's something I don't miss. But,
okay, I got some bits to that.
yeah, but you know, we have been being welcomed so warmly that it's just touching our hearts.
All right. Well, let me ask this question. What message young generation who are so deeply involved in technology and cell phones and stuff like that that they barely talk to people. What message would he have for them?
Well, it's kind of understandable because that's how the system does people. That's how it holds on to people and keep people diverted from what's really going on. But at this point, the only thing we could do is set the example to show the young people what's really important, what really makes you free, what really makes you happy. And we can't do anything but be the example. And when they fall, they can look at us and see how to stand up and keep going.
Plus, Mumia, I just want,
now talk about the young people.
I'm talking about the young people too. John Africa teaches us. Wait, go ahead, you go.
What about the older people who are part of movements who haven't seen this, in their own movements? This move is in many ways unlike other movements. We know that. What is it about move that other movements can learn and grow from to strengthen their movements?
Well, I think basically people can just go back when to move first came above ground and they saw the examples of move and what we did, places that we demonstrated, things that we did. We protected animals. We demonstrated our places to protect women. We protected the rights of the water, the oil, the air, the soil. And MOVE was doing this years ago. In 1970, MOVE was protecting animals. They talked about animal shelters now, and everybody is adamant about protecting life. John Africa taught us this back in the 70s. We were doing this. Some guy back in the 70s was saying they're supposed to be revolutionaries. What are they doing demonstrating against zoos? What are they doing, demonstrating against people who are circuses? Because MOVE was protecting life. That is what John Africa teach us. All those animals and the MOVE demonstrated for their rights. And now it's all over. Everybody's doing what John Africa had set an example for in the 70s. How we were fighting for women's rights. How we were fighting for the air, the water. We protest against the oil refinery. The people were saying they're revolutionaries. What are they doing out there? But now people are so involved in the atmosphere. Everybody wants to do something about it now, but John Africa was telling people this a long time ago, and a long time ago they was calling us crazy, but now everybody's doing it. Or when we was eating raw food, when our diet was to eat raw food, give our children raw food, people saw that as crazy, but everybody's doing it now. And when we face people now, they say, I understand what the purpose was about back then, but I didn't understand it then. And a lot of them are apologizing for the way that they mistreated MOVE for doing the things that they were doing, and people are still trying to catch up with John Africa. John Africa is still moving. That example you see in us will never stop. I'm saying we want to teach our children, this is the technology that they have today, but you don't have to become a slave to that technology. Sure, you can use it, but don't perpetuate it. Don't believe that it's your heart and soul. We are taught to protect and defend life.
All right. Well, listen, I'm on another brother's time. I don't want to chop his time up. So I want to thank y'all for being there. It's a pleasure to hear y'all's voices. It's a pleasure to know that you're there instead of in the joint. I love you all. On the move. Long live John Africa. And long live the power that pulls all things together.
And so first of all, I want to welcome you all. What a wonderful, wonderful turnout. It's great to see you all, people I haven't seen in a long time, people from very different corners. So, estás en su casa, and so on. I also want to note that today is the 40th anniversary of the Sandinista Revolution. And we hear all the time about how Nicaragua's all effed up like Venezuela, the axis of evil. The axis of evil, they're called. And it turns out the statistics and the information on on Nicaragua is quite different. So we don't have time for that now, but I urge you all to not believe a word of what the media tells you about either Venezuela or Nicaragua, or for that matter, almost anything else on this planet. So, Janine and Janet, you've had your break. Come on back up. Another round of applause for these great poems. So, as you see, they don't need a lot of encouragement to get their message out, but they did say they'd like me to open it up with a couple of questions. So, to start, I think a lot of you do know at least some of the history and know that the bombing on May 13th, 1985 was not the only confrontation that took place with MOVE, that there were dozens of them way before, and that in fact the one where the MOVE 9 all ended up being imprisoned for so many decades happened starting in 1978. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. And Janine and Janet at that time were in their 20s, with children living in this collective household and being attacked by the Philadelphia police and all its machinations during that time, which led to their going to prison. The stories I've heard from them have been mind-blowing. So the story that both of you told, that I've heard you talk about, what happened when the police came in into the Powhatan Village house that you were living in, what you did with the children and yourselves, and how you were taken to prison from there. If you could tell a little bit about that so that the audience gets the feel, because I start shaking when you tell those stories. And I keep saying, I keep being blown away by their heroism, as they talk about what they describe often as just ordinary actions for survival. But these ordinary actions are tremendous lessons for all of us. And I wish you'd start by sharing some of them.
Everybody saw the arrest, but nobody knows what went on in that house, except for us. You know, we were in the basement, and over 500 cops and firemen lined up outside of that house at 3 in the morning. And they knocked out all our windows, tore down our fence, tore down our platform, drilled holes in the floor above us, and stationed themselves around the whole house and started opening fire. And all we could do was hold our children as close to us as we could and wait to be shot down, because that's how they came at us. They had a deluge hose that was so powerful, was picking up the 6-foot railroad ties that was part of our fence and throwing them back in the window like they were toothpicks. They had the water so high up that the children had to stand on our backs and on our legs so that they wouldn't drown. And when that didn't flush us out, they started pouring in smoke canisters and tear gas that was later told to us that it was an instant death mechanism, because once that smoke and water mixed, it cuts your breath off instantly. And that's what happened. When they did that, it felt like that was our last breath that we was taking, our last breath that our children were taking. We sat there and we watched the bullet sparks fly off the walls next to us. You just seeing them, sparks where you see the gunshot. And we sat there until we heard one of the men say, "Get the women and children out." And we couldn't see a hand in front of us. I couldn't even see the baby I was holding because of the smoke. So only because of Janet Africa, I made it out of that house. and was surrounded by police officers snatching our babies and laughing, talking about how good little mothers we were, you know. And when we went to court and saw the film, they filmed the whole thing. The time that we was coming up out the basement, the cops were still shooting. We didn't know it. So it's only because of the power of John Africa that we made it out of that building alive with our children.
Long live John Africa. I want everybody to know the reason that they did this to us is because of the position that we took against the system, against police brutality, against what they were doing to animals, what they were doing to the water, the soil, the air. Move was innocent. We were not guilty of anything. The only thing that Move was guilty of was exposing this system for people to see what it was. They did not want that. They didn't want people to see what they were really about. That's why they used the news media to cover it up, to make it look like Move was dirty, Move was crazy, because then people would say, well, they got what they deserved. But we did not get what we deserved. We got what they wanted to give us to fool people into thinking that that's what we deserved when we didn't. And in that basement, like Janine said, it's an experience that nobody could ever imagine. When I was in that basement, and I'm not very tall, when they shot in the smoke and the gas, you couldn't see anything, you couldn't hear anything. And I had 2 children with me. And being short as I was, I just got up. The water, they shot water, and the water came up to here on me. So what I did was like this, and the 2 children stood right here on me to keep their heads and their noses above water. And these people that were trying to kill us, the cops, the firemen, they knew there was children in that basement. They knew there was innocent people in that basement, but they kept on shooting water, they kept on shooting bullets, they kept on shooting smoke, just kept on and on and on. It would not stop. I was standing there, and I had the kids, and I started breathing, and I couldn't breathe anymore. And I felt like I was breathing my last breath. I'm serious, y'all. I felt like that was going to be it. I was going to die in there like that. And then the air cleared. I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not saying this just for y'all to say, oh my goodness, that air cleared, and the only thing that could be was the power of God, the power of John Africa that kept me alive from that basement. Because I know what it feels like to be in that position, because I had been in the hospital before, and they had given me some antibiotics, and those antibiotics they gave me was taking my breath away, and the people in the hospital had to give me something to revive me. And that same way that I felt in that hospital as my breath was leaving my body is the same way that I felt down in that basement. So I know I felt the power of God, the power of John Africa in my life. That is why I'm so committed and so loyal to John Africa, because if it was not for my belief, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I would be dead thanks to the cops in Philadelphia. And Suzanne, I cannot take away from May 13th, because my family was in that house May 13th, 1985, and they were fighting for what we were arrested for in 1978. And in doing that, our family had exhausted every avenue to get us out of jail, because they sentenced us 30 to 100 years in prison, because one cop was shot with 1 bullet. They charged 9 of us with the death of 1 cop. The cop was standing on the corner against the pole. Move people are down in the basement facing that cop. He got shot in the back of the head and the bullet traveled downward. It would have been impossible for Move to have shot that cop, and they know it. Everybody knew it. Even the cops knew it. In trial, they knew it. But because they wanted to get Move off the street, because they wanted to lock us up, because they wanted to stop John Africa's teaching, they charged 11 of us with the death of that cop. But they let 3 of them go because they were Move members. They said they wasn't committed Move members, so they let them go. But those of us, the 9 that said we were committed Move members, they kept us in jail. So the point wasn't keeping Move in jail because we was guilty. The point was, the fact was, they kept Move in jail because we were committed to John Africa. And we want everybody to know that we will never stop giving our life to this struggle, because people need what John Africa has to give. And we are setting that example for people to do that, you know, so people can live life the way it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? But we can't because of this system. But I mean, it's going to take generations, but we can start now. We can start taking baby steps, and people can do little things that help the air, little things that help the water, little things that help the soil, because we need those things to sustain our life. And you go to the store, you pay money for any item that you buy. But Mama, the earth, what we call Mama, is feeding us, is giving us water. But we don't want to pay her. We don't want to pay her not putting all those pollutants in the air, the water, the soil. But you pay the grocery store. We got to pay Mama back too for giving us the breath of life that we have in us. And just like everybody wants to say, thank you, Janet, thank you, Janine, thank you, Move. It's just like saying thank you to the air that's filling your lungs. How do you thank the water that quenches your thirst? Because it's always there. How you thank the food that fills you and nourishes you. This is what John Africa does for us. You know, it looks like us on the outside because we did an activity to show people what can be done to strengthen themselves so they don't have to become slaves to this system. And all we have to do is just work together. Give it to our children because we need it. Everybody needs it. Everybody needs the air. Everybody needs the water. Everybody needs the soil. But we have to give back the same way that we give back to those stores that we go to and pay them for what we want. You know, it's not asking much for something that's keeping us alive. And that is what John Africa teach. This is the example that you see in us. When you say how good we look, it's because of John Africa's teaching. When you say that we don't look like we've been away, that's because of John Africa's teaching, because we're setting an example, y'all, for people to follow, for people to see that it can be done. Nobody's asking people to jump out there and do things overnight, because the sun don't come up overnight. Grass don't grow overnight. It's gradual, it takes time. I mean, but it has to start somewhere. And let's start now. Let's start with the children. Let's start with the work, so we don't have to be slaves to this system. You know, we don't have to bow down to something that is not right, that's not keeping us healthy. You know what I mean? We don't have to do that. And that example we showed y'all for the 41 years shows you that we don't have to do it. We stood up against a system, y'all. We refused to say that we was guilty when we was innocent, and they refused to let us out of jail. We got denied over and over and over and over. Even the people that run this system know that we were innocent. But despite that, they still kept us in jail, still did things that they felt like would break us, to make us feel like we would move. But it didn't work, and they had to let us out. And they're not happy about it at all. And they're not happy that we're talking to y'all. But we're saying, everybody, take your time, listen to what we're saying, use these examples, and get strong. Don't let them enslave you. Don't let them imprison you, because the bars of that prison ain't just inside the prison. You know what I mean? They're out here too. So, you know, just keep on doing your work, keep on moving, and things will be good.
I made a mistake. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Suzanne Ross. I've been active in this movement for a long time. I was going to ask, but more concretely, along the same lines that you're talking about, because it's not credible to people. It's hard for people to believe that after 41 years in prison, and we read, this audience is a sophisticated audience in terms of prison life. We saw how Mumia was just cut off, you know, and you were saying you don't miss that. So given the reality of what you dealt with, concretely, how did you survive it all? I know John Africa's teachings guided you, but day-to-day living, when they come, and maybe you could even tell Carlos, where's Carlos?
Right here.
Okay, Carlos is going to follow up in a little while to describe how the men supported the women while the women were fighting back. Maybe you can tell a story about how, I know I heard the story about how this guard came over to you one day, Janet, and what Janine did. I love that story. Maybe you can tell that. Or something else about how you concretely managed. So you described how the children were on your lap and how you kept them alive. But in prison, there were other challenges, horrible things that they did and tried to do to you. So how did you fight back? How did you, aside from your ideology, what did you do tactically?
Well, the same thing that we do out here, we know we have to stay strong. We have to keep a hold on to our belief. You see, the things that we do physically is a result of our belief. Because we hold on to that, we use that as a guide. So that's what helps us out in situations. Like the situation where they told us when we first came to prison that we were going to be put in the hole. And when we asked how long will we have to be in the hole, the guard said, what's your sentence? We said 30 to 100 years. And he said, that's how long you're going to be in the hole. Not for doing anything wrong, but just because we're MOVE members. And we had to go on a hunger strike confrontation to defend our belief, to show them that they are not going to persecute us, beat us down, and break us because we're MOVE members. So we went on a hunger strike for 45 days. 45 days, no food and just a little bit of water. And this was the same time that the IRA, Bobby Sands, they went on it and they were having some serious health issues, you know, and so the prison got scared because of our situation, because they saw, they monitored, they knew we weren't eating. And they sent 6 big 200-pound, 300-pound male guards into each of our cells to jump on us. We had already been without food for over 45 days, jumped on us, held us down, put our face into the mattress so we couldn't see what they was doing, raped us of our blood, shot us up with some other chemical that made all of us sick, and then told the public that they were putting us back in population now because we submitted to their health test, instead of just saying, you know, we're backing off because these women have showed us that they are strong and they're not going to break, and we're scared about what could happen if these women die in here. Those are the kind of things we had to face in there. We were always being challenged with our commitment because people see men as strong. They know MOVE men are strong, but they don't know about the strength of a MOVE woman. And Janine Africa showed them how strong MOVE women are. We had to fight and defend ourselves for over 40 years, because each time we were transferred to another prison, we had to show that prison administration that we cannot be broken. So we had to use our belief to get ourselves strong and show these people that we're committed to Janine Africa, we're committed to our belief, and we don't care what you come at us with, we're not giving in. And we were facing those challenges, and you see, we never broke, never.